Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time I would like to talk about how Nintendo's silence as of late has been disappointing. But before you jump to any conclusions, just let me make myself clear here. I do not mean to doom and gloom. I'm not trying to spread negativity here, or complain, or be ungrateful, or anything of that matter. This is not meant to be an immature or childish discussion. It's simply how I feel. It has been disappointing because I thought we would see something sooner, and it has been strange. People thought we would see Switch 2 by now, and we haven't, yet every day there's another Switch 2 accessory leak. People thought we might see something at the Game Awards, myself included. I was pulling for something Metroid, and yet Nintendo was a no-show. And so I want to talk about these situations more so, dive a bit deeper into them, and ultimately what I'm planning on getting at here is a silver lining. What might this all mean and how ultimately it's still going to be a good thing? But before going forward, let me take this moment to ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you're unsure, watch through this video and then consider subscribing and hitting that bell. So something I would like to point out first is another accessory leak for Switch 2. So the leaks we've been getting as of late have been different leaks from different Chinese manufacturers. And so perhaps for a lot of English speakers who are not familiar with these different brands, a lot of people have been more skeptical of these leaks. But now we have one that's perhaps a bit more known. dbrand on Twitter posted this, and they say, "We will not be answering any questions at this time," but they share this image. Kill Switch 2. You have this accessory that's housing what appears to be the Switch 2, including that U-shaped kickstand we've been talking about over the last few months. For those that have doubted the leaks, this is a popular brand that is clearly showing a Switch 2 accessory where the Switch 2 would have a U-shaped kickstand. So I think it adds more validity to all the other leaks. And, well, if you're hoping for that U-shaped kickstand, here it is. But there's really not much more to say on this more than what we've said before. The main point I want to make from this is that it's another Switch 2 accessory leak. They're coming out seemingly every day. And this brings us back to other things that have been leaked from different partners of Nintendo, but not Nintendo themselves. We've talked about the Yooka-Laylee trailer. We've talked about the Ruffy and the Riverside trailer, how both these trailers in their press releases indicated that they'll be coming to Switch 2 without specifically saying Switch 2. There are different things like this happening throughout the industry where different third-party companies have already expressed that they are on board the Switch 2 train, that they are supporting the Switch 2, that they have content or accessories or some type of hardware that is being prepared for the Switch 2. But Nintendo themselves, they have yet to unveil the console, even though a lot of us by this point thought it would have happened. And at this point, let me make myself clear. I have zero expectation that we're going to see an announcement until late January. Maybe the second half of January, like the third week, maybe the second and a half week or something like that. But it's not happening until a few weeks into January, is my point here. But a lot of us thought it would have happened sooner. I myself predicted that we would see it in September. That did not happen. And ultimately, the reason why I think Nintendo hasn't revealed the console by this point is just because it's not that soon to release yet. It's not coming out in March, as a lot of us were hoping, as it was reported ad nauseum throughout the year. Instead, what I think is happening is what we've heard as of late, that it's coming out closer to the May to July period of time. And so I think we're probably going to see Nintendo finally unveil the console late January, early February, by that shareholders meeting on February 4th, and then they'll have about a 4.5 month window similar to Switch 1 from reveal to release, and the console will come out. But it is a weird situation right now, because it does look like Nintendo is already manufacturing the console, getting things ready. We've talked about this before. We've seen the evidence from Foxconn's financial reports that they have already completed some significant amounts of projects here and have sent them over likely to Nintendo. And so it seems Nintendo is just trying to build up a large stock of Switch 2s So when they do launch close to the end of spring or early summer, they're going to have so much in stock that they're going to be able to combat scalping, they're going to really be able to hit the ground running, and it's going to be a fantastic launch with hopefully a stellar lineup of games, which I would kind of assume given how slow things have been as of late. Which brings me to the Game Awards situation, and is ultimately why I wanted to make this video today. So I will go ahead and just take the L on me anticipating some type of Nintendo news at the Game Awards, and specifically I was pulling for Metroid news. I do still stand by this idea that there is a buildup of Metroid marketing. I do think we are seeing the signs with the website update, with the Metroid Prime 1-3 retrospective art book coming out in the summer. I do think that there's going to be a buildup here. I do think we're still going to see Prime 2 and 3, and then 4 come out next year. There's going to be this big campaign for Metroid, and I thought maybe they could show it off at the Game Awards. But Nintendo was a no-show at the Game Awards. And something kind of funny, while I was pulling for Metroid, 2 other possibilities that we discussed as maybe being shown off at the Game Awards from Nintendo, one being for maybe some news on Xenoblade Chronicles X, but the other would be maybe finally a whole new trailer for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which interestingly, Nintendo decided to put out an overview trailer the day before the Game Awards, but not actually at the show. However, something that people continue to say, and I just strongly disagree with what's being said here, is that Nintendo doesn't have a presence at the Game Awards most of the time. This is just factually untrue. Listen. The Game Awards just celebrated their 10th anniversary. So what does that mean? This is the 11th Game Awards show. And I'm not going to go ahead and list every single announcement from Nintendo over the years, but instead I'm just going to show this image here and talk about the percentages. Not counting the award show this year, so 10 years of data. Across those 10 years, Nintendo had published game announcements during the award show 8 of those 10 years. In other words, going into this award show for this year, based off history, 80% of the time, there was some sort of Nintendo announcement. Now, if you want to go back to last year, where technically they didn't have one of those world premieres, but rather, they just had N64 games announced for Nintendo Switch Online during the show, at the start of the show. If you want to subtract that, sure, okay. That's still 70% of the time. But now, with Nintendo having essentially a no-show during the awards show, if you want to count those N64 game announcements, it's 72% of the time. If you don't want to count it, it's still 64% of the time across 11 years. Point being, odds are, as history shows, Nintendo likely will show off something that is a published Nintendo announcement during the awards show. Unfortunately, this is one of those years where they didn't do it. Now, some people speak to the Switch 2 situation. They are transitioning over to their next console, so why would they start focusing on it now, and they're going to wait until later where they'll maybe have some sort of big Game Award announcement. Except we go back to 2016, prior to when the Switch came out in early 2017, Bill Trinen essentially presented a Treehouse segment of Breath of the Wild as a world premiere during the Game Awards. But I guess the bigger difference here is that the Switch was already unveiled by this point, and this time around, Switch 2 has not been unveiled yet because it looks like it's coming out a little bit later into the year. And maybe that's why ultimately Nintendo decided to bow out from the show, and really all they did is have this commercial where at the end they say, "Thank you for joining us now and into the future." Arguably a very subtle hint towards their future, where it will include some special things like the Switch 2. It's a very minimalist approach here, and it sort of kind of highlights how weak Nintendo's year was. Now, I'm not trying to say that this is a bad year for Nintendo. It kind of depends on your perspective. If you're looking at 2024 as a typical year for Nintendo, then I would say, yeah, this was definitely a bad year for Nintendo. Most of Nintendo's games this year weren't that high up on the Metacritic scores. Most of Nintendo games this year aren't the biggest of sellers, and Nintendo didn't win any awards. They even lost the Family Award, which is typically reserved for a Nintendo game at the Game Awards. Instead, it went to Astro Bot, which I'll speak more on in a moment here because I do think it's actually a pretty significant point to be made. But anyways, yeah, Nintendo hasn't had a fantastic year if you look at this as a normal year. But from the perspective of this being a transition year, well, they've continued to still provide games for us to play consistently throughout the year, They've already announced some games for next year as well, even though we're expecting the launch of the Switch 2 in late spring to early summer from what we've heard from a few different sources. And so for a transition year, I will say that this is good. But in terms of typical Nintendo, it is certainly bad. And paying attention to the Game Awards and how they're celebrating their 10th anniversary, it's meant to be a celebration of gaming. And there are certainly elements to the Game Awards that I don't like. I didn't even watch the show live. I just kind of paid attention to different things that were going on passively. It still ultimately is where most people of the industry gather and pay attention to, and I would agree it is still a big part of the industry, and that Nintendo should absolutely be a part of it. So it disappoints me to see that Nintendo really didn't bring anything this time around. But what sort of saved the show for me a little bit was that my personal game of the year, Astrobot, won Game of the Year. Now, stick with me here. If you are a hardcore Nintendo fan, you might not like what you're hearing here, but I play other games on other consoles, including PlayStation, and I've been enjoying my PS5 a lot more than my Switch this year. Why? Because the PlayStation has a lot of games that are intriguing to me, but this year Nintendo's not really bringing it because it's a transition year, and so there hasn't really been that much for me to personally enjoy, save for a couple releases throughout the year, like Echoes of Wisdom, for example. But anyways, Astrobot, to me, feels like a 3D Mario game. As I played through Astrobot this year, I enjoyed it a lot, and it kept getting me excited for what we might see on Switch 2 with 3D Mario, and just how much bigger and grander that experience is going to be. There is clearly a lot of Nintendo inspiration with Astrobot, and I think that's a big part of why Astrobot is so special. There are other elements to it, and I'm not trying to take away from it anyway. Again, it's my personal favorite game for this specific year, across all consoles, by the way, and I'm happy to see that it won Game of the Year. But it got me even happier when we saw the team acknowledge, without stating Nintendo themselves because they can't because, PlayStation, but they still made sure to make it clear that a huge inspiration for Astrobot and for platformers and just an important part to the industry overall is Nintendo. And to me, it almost sort of saved the entire event because I was disappointed to see that the Game Awards, a celebration for the industry, celebrating its 10th anniversary, didn't really have that much of a Nintendo presence, but it was the makers of Astrobot, a PlayStation exclusive, that made sure to remind us that Nintendo is a big part of the industry. That has irony, that is poetic, it was beautiful, I really appreciated it, and it just helped me to respect Team Asobi that much more. But getting back to the overall point of how Nintendo's silence has disappointed me, leading up to this Game of the Year winning announcement, the final premiere of the show was another big Sony-published exclusive. Sony had a much more powerful presence at this award show. But here's the weird thing about this. There's a lot of games at the show that very likely may be coming to Nintendo Switch 2, but because Nintendo has not officially unveiled the console, all these different potential partners cannot announce their intent to release their games for Switch 2. So in a way, you could argue Nintendo has missed a little bit of an opportunity here to really highlight to the world all these different games that are coming to their next generation platform. And so I am disappointed we haven't seen Switch 2 yet. I am disappointed we didn't get to see Metroid at this show, where I thought it really would have fit the audience and would have done a great job to helping it build more momentum into a successful launch campaign next year. And I am disappointed that in this celebration of the industry, Nintendo had such a minimal presence, and it had to be a Sony studio, Team Asobi, that had to make sure to remind us how important Nintendo is, which was a beautiful moment, but also still kind of sad from a Nintendo perspective. Now, is this the end of the world? Does this spell bad things for the future of Nintendo? No. Really what it highlights is our eagerness for the future. The fact that the winner for the Game Awards is a game heavily inspired by Nintendo, where most of us Nintendo fans know that while Astrobot may be a special game, I don't think there are many that are arguing that the next 3D Mario isn't going to be an even better experience. The next 3D Mario is probably going to blow our minds, as is Metroid Prime 4. I am eagerly anticipating Nintendo bringing it. I am anticipating them coming out full force next year to launch their new console and come out with some fantastic games. This year has been a down year, and so as a hardcore Nintendo fan, I miss Nintendo bringing it. And they brought it for most of the years during the Switch era, so I'm excited to see them come back, and perhaps as strong as they ever have been, for a far more powerful system that is seemingly getting more and more leaked by different accessory makers every single day. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.